Welcome to the Late Night Race Review.
The Chinese Grand Prix is underway. Off the line we go with Antonelli trying to cover off Lewis Hamilton. The Mercedes are fighting each other. Do they open the door for Lewis Hamilton, who sweeps round and takes the lead? Ferrari 1, will it be Ferrari 2? Hamilton taking the lead, greeted by a huge roar. Antonelli squeezes Charles Leclerc all over the curb, and he's hanging on to second place. Crucial for his race. George Russell is down to fourth. It's Hamilton, Antonelli, Leclerc and Russell, the top four. Here comes the history boy, the second youngest driver to win a Formula One Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli wins.
Yes! Yes, man! We did it, man!
Well done there, mate. First race win. It is one you're going to remember forever, Val.
Make sure to stick around as we wrap up the episode with our predictions game and take a look at our F1 Fantasy League. And don't forget to support the podcast by clicking those like, follow and subscribe buttons. Welcome on into the Late Night Race Review. My name is Aidan Scott, and joining me this evening, as always, is Isidro Gonçalves and Damien Scott. How are you both keeping this evening?
Doing well. Just before the holiday.
Yeah, all good here.
Good. That's good to hear. Now, chaps, we've all made our opinions very clear on these new 2026 regulations over the last couple of episodes. For this episode, we're just going to focus on the racing, okay? And with that being said, folks, we made it to round 2 of the 2026 Formula E season. Sorry, I meant Formula 1 season. Apologies. I got the two sports mixed up there for a second. You know, it could be a little bit hard to tell sometimes with these new regulations. I'm just kidding. But we finally arrived for the Chinese Grand Prix. All of the teams were able to charge their cars up over the week's break. Well, maybe not every single team, but we didn't just get a Grand Prix, we also got the first sprint race of the season. Now, before we jump into all of the action and break down both the sprint race and the Grand Prix, we did receive some F1 news this week. It has been confirmed that both the Bahrain and Saudi Arabian races will be cancelled. So once we get Japan out of the way, we'll have a 5-week break until we're back again for the Miami GP in May. Now, we won't be getting too much into the whole situation, but understandably, this has come as a bit of a disappointment to many. But regardless of anyone's feelings or opinions on this one, the safety of the drivers, the teams, the people who work at these events, and also fans that are actually going to these events is ultimately the most important thing. However, I think if we look at how the majority of the grid has somewhat been struggling with these new set of regulations, I'm pretty sure this extended break in the season will definitely give the teams a bit of a chance to try and maybe tweak some of the issues that they've been having behind the scenes. But anyway, chaps, we need to talk about this sprint race. So, even before we get the sprint underway, we had some car troubles from both Perez, who started in P21 due to a fuel issue in quali, and we also had Albon starting from the pits due to an engine change. So definitely a bit of drama for some of the teams before we even got this underway. But just like last weekend in Melbourne, we got another fantastic battle between Ferrari and Mercedes. And kicking it off with Ferrari, Isidro, it was another weekend, another incredible Ferrari start. Pretty much we had Hamilton shooting by Kimi Antonelli and taking P1 on lap 1 going down into turn 1. That was an incredible start by Ferrari again. We then also had a fantastic battle between Russell and Hamilton. It was just, you know, it was like a yo-yo back and forward between the two of them for the couple of laps there. I know Hamilton, he got back into P1 there by lap 2, and then ultimately George, he did get the better of Hamilton. We then had that battle between Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. That was definitely an intense battle. Hopefully we don't see any sort of, repeats of Rosberg and Hamilton way back when. But then inevitably when Bottas and Hulkenberg retired on lap 13, that brought out the safety car. Now, at that stage, I know Charles, he was complaining that he was having a little bit of issues with rear grip and all that kind of stuff. But then he actually had a major spin there just at the second to last turn before we go onto the main straight, which ultimately allowed George to get away. Now, we had Charles finishing up in P2 and Lewis in P3, picking up some really good points for Ferrari from the sprint race, 13 points in total. Isidro, what did you make of that Ferrari performance during the sprint? Obviously, sprint, it's very different to a main Grand Prix. It's a very shorter stint. I mean, I think Ferrari, they kind of know what they're doing now with these new regulations. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, I'm quite surprised how well Ferrari is doing. I I'm happy that they went with their initial idea of having that rotating wing or whatever it was, because that would definitely mess up with the way they are doing right now. It was a short race, the sprint, but the Ferraris, they are definitely night and day from last season. It's very good to see the battles that Ferrari are doing between themselves, Leclerc and Hamilton. Fair fight on track. No shenanigans about red rules or Ferrari rules or whatever you want to call. Just pure racing. It's very, very good to see Ferrari doing well after all these decades.
Yeah, no, definitely. And just on the point about that wing, we got, well, I think I put it into the group chat, the rotisserie rear wing. Apparently, yeah, they did bring it out. I think it was during practice or something like that, or they were going to bring it for practice or the sprint, but they actually found when they were testing it, apparently they found an issue with that when they were going down. I can't remember exactly where they tested this. Maybe they did bring it out of practice. I didn't see this now, but apparently before the sort of last or corner entry before a straight, they actually found that the rear wing, it causes a lot of instability in the car, on the rear of the car. So I think that's why they got rid of that, because, you know, if you think about China, there's two major long straights that we have with there. And I mean, you know, we had Charles already spinning there with lack of grip. I mean, if you add that rotisserie wing on top of that car would have been doing a complete 360, I think. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it definitely was maybe a good call. Maybe a few more tweaks that they need to make. Who knows? Maybe they might bring it to Japan. It might be interesting to see that wing at some stage if they kind of get a handle on that. But no, you're totally right. Those battles were just absolutely phenomenal. It was great to see that. And it was great to see just that Ferrari energy back on the track, because, yeah, we've definitely missed it for a very long time as Ferrari fans. But yeah, look, great result from Ferrari, definitely showing that they have a handle on these new set of regulations coming in P2 and P3 there from the sprint. But then moving on to their rivals Mercedes. Damien, pretty much another weekend, another terrible Mercedes start. Mercedes, they thought they could maybe get a handle on the race starts this weekend going into China, you know, maybe a complete reverse from what happened in Melbourne. But pretty much there was an issue, I think, with battery deployment, possibly. I think maybe Russell, or I think maybe Antonelli, I think he came across the radio, or I think in the post-race interview, I think he maybe discussed something about that there. But I think it's just pretty much a case of that they're just having a little bit of difficulty with those race starts, and especially trying to defend from the Ferraris. But things got a little bit worse for Mercedes, especially on lap 1 with Antonelli hitting Hadjar. He definitely didn't have the greatest starts when it came to the sprint race. But even though he was having a little bit of difficulty with Hadjar, he definitely made it his mission to come back up through the pack, which is, of course, I think that's the Mercedes motto this season. Yeah, we'll drop off maybe at the start of the race, but we'll definitely blast on back through. But of course, look, that George and Lewis Hamilton battle, again, I know we spoke about it with Ezejo, that was just absolutely fantastic, back and forward between the two of them. And then of course, look, Kimi coming back up through the pack to eventually, I think we finished up in P5, and of course Russell did finish in P1, picking up some nice points, 12 points in total there from the sprint race. But overall, Damien, what did you make of Mercedes during that sprint? I know we were actually texting each other at that time. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning for myself here, but definitely an interesting one.
Yeah, well, the start doesn't matter if the finish is good, so you know that's the bit that they've nailed down at Mercedes. Again, I think most teams are just trying to find their feet in terms of how to start a race, and you know, getting used to the new regulations and the new way of managing their car. Red Bull seemed to be another one that have issues with their starts. Max in particular, I think twice now the past couple of weekends has had serious issues on his start. So maybe it's just the Ferraris are a lot better off the start line as well. They seem to have it nailed down in pretty much every area. But as an overall package, you have to say the Mercedes is looking like the better car overall. So even if they do go a bit behind at the start, they're going to make up the places. So yeah, they're a little bit behind, kind of kicking off. But yeah, as I said, they cut back through the pack, and unfortunately, Kimi had that incident with Hadjar where he took him out. There was no other way to describe it. And yeah, I think as soon as he got hit, everybody's like, right, okay, he's got a time penalty to serve here at some stage, which I think is fair enough. I don't think you could argue it too much from the Mercedes side. But yeah, it was good race strategy from Mercedes. They made the penalty time, and yeah, Kimi got his way back up through the field, and he finished in fifth, was it, I think. So yeah, I think good work from both of them, and yeah, there's some great battles between the Ferraris and the Mercedes up the front there, like overtaking each other every so often, and yeah, it was a great race. Unfortunately, because of the safety car, we lost. I don't know, was it 4 or 5 laps? It was a really good race, and it just kind of ended, and I was like, oh no, we're just really getting into this battle. There was a little bit more to it, I think, but yeah, overall a great finish for Mercedes, I think. And yeah, Kim kind of showing his grit and determination to get back up the grid when he gets those kind of setbacks. So yeah, it was a good drive from both, I think.
Yeah, I think that's going to be sort of the motto of Mercedes for the next couple of races anyway. For the first part of the season, it's going to be that case. If they drop off, sure, look, they'll be able to come back and win it anyway. Sure, they have the best car on the grid. And I think it kind of puts it into perspective as well, especially with getting that 10-second time penalty and being able to come in, serve that, and then still finish P5, and everybody else is still struggling to even get to like P6 or P7. Like that does say a lot. When it comes to Mercedes, they definitely have a rocket ship of a car this season. Or look, maybe they just they got a handle on these set of regulations before everybody else. But moving on to the next team, and I know you did mention this, Damien, a little bit about Max here, but Isidro, we do need to talk about Red Bull. I think both teams are starting to see red in Red Bull. We had Verstappen, first of all, getting bogged down on the race start. I know Verstappen, he has expressed his opinions a lot on these new cars. He is not happy at all with the new Red Bull, and especially with how these regulations have affected the development of this car. But obviously, look, getting bogged down at the start of the race and then dropping down to P14 by lap 2. Definitely, I wouldn't even say a different Verstappen compared to last season, because quite honestly, I don't believe that this is a driver situation. This is just literally the car is a shitbox and they need to get a handle on it and they need to get it back into competitive form. But obviously, look, he did manage to work his way back up through the pack, and I'm nearly sure he did finish up. I think it was in P9 or something like that anyway. Obviously missing out on that vital 1 point from the sprint race. But as we did mention there with Mercedes, Hajar, he did get hit by Kimi. He dropped all the way down to P15 and managed to come back and finish in P10. So even though, they might have a difficult enough car in their hands, they still managed to come back somewhat through the pack. Now, obviously, it's a little bit of a different story in the Grand Prix, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But I'm also going to sort of throw in their sister team on this as well, Visa Cash App Red Bull, or let's call them just Racing Bulls again this season. We had Lindblad getting spun by Stroll, and then Lindblad had to retire the car. Now, he obviously, look, when it came to his like race pace and stuff like that, like he was doing well, but obviously in that, like, getting hit by Stroll and all that kind of stuff, you can't really determine, where he would have ended up after that. An incident is an incident and whatever, but he has been putting in some really, really good performance. But then also as well, Liam Lawson coming out of the shadows, finishing up in P7, picking up 2 vital points there for Racing Bulls. So yeah, it definitely a little bit of a difficult one, especially for the sprint race for both teams, for both Red Bull and Racing Bulls. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, I think it's much worse situation for Red Bull, considering they are the top team, and Racing Bulls are so far 2 races in, and Racing Bulls are doing much better with, I'll say, probably a lower budget than Red Bull is doing so far. So I'm not sure why they are not performance at least as good as Racing Bulls are. At the moment, Red Bull is definitely not looking good. And like you said, it's not driver's fault. It's not that the driver is the problem or he doesn't know what he's doing. If Verstappen cannot make anything out of that Red Bull car, no other driver on the grid can do anything with it. So they definitely need either bin it or just get the Racing Bull from Lindblad and Racing Bull from Lawson and just replace the Red Bulls.
Just change the livery. Just throw a new coat of paint over the Red Bull or the Racing Bull and change it with the Oracle Red Bull Racing and be like, they'll be none the wiser. It's like Lindblad and Lawson going, why is this car so shit now?
And Lawson will be back in the Red Bull second seat without knowing.
Exactly. He just scratches the paint off the side of the car a little bit and he's like, hang on a second, I've seen those colours somewhere before. But yeah, no, it was definitely a difficult one for Red Bull overall. But yeah, look, for the little bit of action that we did get from that sprint race, it was exciting. Now, obviously, with a safety car and stuff like that, that obviously takes up a big chunk of time. But it was definitely an exciting one. And I think, again, it just mainly comes down to the battles between Mercedes and Ferrari during that sprint race. Now, obviously, it was a little bit different in the Grand Prix. We will go into that very shortly now. But definitely a really, really good sprint race to kick off the season. Now, overall for the sprint race, your top 8, because if you're new to Formula 1 when it comes to the sprint races, the top 8 are only the people who score points from a sprint race. So our top 8 was George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton, we had Norris in P4, Antonelli in P5, Piastri in P6, Liam Lawson in P7, and Ollie Behrman picking up that final point for Haas in P8. And then also we had 3 DNFs. We had Lindblad, Bottas, and also Hulkenberg. So yeah, definitely an interesting one when it came to the sprint race. Now, moving on to the main event, the Grand Prix itself. Obviously, a little bit later from the sprint race, we had the qualifying, the grid was set, and everything was looking peachy for the main Grand Prix. Until Sunday morning rolled around, and oh my god, there was a ton of teams with a bunch of issues, even before the race got underway. We had both McLarens out due to separate issues with the car. I think Lando Norris, he kind of somewhat mentioned it was power unit related. Oscar Piastri somewhat hinted that it was battery power unit related as well. Obviously, they're not going to tell exactly what the issue is, but there was a major issue with both of those cars. So very upsetting to see both McLarens out if you're a Papaya fan going into Sunday. And then also as well, we had Albon and Bortoletto out of the race due to issues with their cars. 4 cars in total already, even before the race had begun, all out of the race. Definitely sad scenes if you're fans of those particular teams. Now, also as well, we had George. He had issues in qualifying even prior to this. Before even the race got underway, he just missed out on P1 just by a few milliseconds, mainly because he had issues with a flat battery in that qualifying session. So coming back out into his last lap in qualifying, he had colder tyres than Kimi Antonelli. He obviously had to push them a lot harder. Obviously, he didn't have the same amount of grip that Kimi had, and then eventually he ended up in P2. But the quick thing I just want to note here, guys, and this is, we're not going to get into a massive debate here about, are these regs bad or blah, 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 blah. We're not going to get into a huge thing about these. But obviously, 2 races in and a sprint race, there's definitely an issue here that I think at this stage, the FIA, they need to somewhat support these teams in a massive way. Are these new regulations, are they just potentially hindering a full grid start for this season? Like, is this going to be the case as we go into Japan? Are we going to get this even after the 5-week break that we have now coming up, and then we go into Miami? Damien, I'll get your thoughts real quick on this one. Like, I think you have to agree with me that something has to change, or there has to be some support given to get these regs underway, because we can't just have an entire season with just teams not making the grid because flat battery or power unit issue, even if they do have an engine change.
Well, I think McLaren's issue seemed to be more of a software problem. So they said it was something to do with the standard sensor that's issued by the FIA, and then that interfacing with the Mercedes power unit. So yeah, software bug. So that's really nothing to do with the engine or the power unit or the platform as such. That's just somebody made a mistake somewhere. So that's going to happen. Unfortunately, it hit both of them. And that's McLaren's first double DNS since like 2005, I think they were saying. So somebody screwed up somewhere there. P45 in the morning for whoever.
Yeah, I think that's definitely coming somebody's way at some stage this week. Isidro, what do you think about that? Like, do you agree? Like, do you maybe think that these regulations are hindering, or is it just a case of, yeah, look, certain teams are just having little tiny issues, little gremlins that are causing these problems? Or do you think after now that we've had 2 races and a sprint race that we do need to see some sort of support when it comes to these new regulations?
I think there's some adjustments that some teams are having more problems to fix than others. But at the end, the ones that are happy with the car and winning are the ones less complaining than the other teams. So yeah, I think there's adjustments to be made. It's new stuff for every team. It's just a matter of some teams are adjusting faster than others. I think the issues like the McLaren that Damien was talking about, it's more on their side rather than Mercedes. Although I cannot rule out Toto having a little dashboard on his computer, just toggling on and off whenever he wants, just more power, less power, turn off, or things like that. But overall, I think that's just a matter of time of teams to adjust. And today was the first sprint, so there wasn't a practice, 3 practices to adjust to the car. It was just 1 practice race, or in this case qualified and race. So I think we saw which teams are more prepared for the pressure than others. And I think so far, overall, George had issues, but I think Mercedes is doing very well, and Ferrari is surprisingly doing very, very well.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. Like, obviously, yeah, look, when you have teams that are up there at the top of the grid, they're not going to be making much complaints, and they're probably going to be like, yeah, no, don't change this. But I just think for, you know, I don't even want to say fair racing, because at the end of the day, every team is going to make sure that it's not fair. They're going to make sure that they do have an advantage in some way, shape or form. But I mean, just for equal racing, it would just be incredible if just like we could all get these regulations under control and just have a full bloody race. Like, I know that's only 2 races in, we have a long season ahead of us, but it's just, I just fear that it's going to be a long time before we see all 22 cars start the race and finish the race together, you know? But yeah.
Wait, you were talking about fair. I want to say something, but Damien is first. Go ahead, Damien.
Go ahead.
Before we move on, I think the point that Cedro was talking about there, the Toto Wolff button, this has kind of been bubbling for a couple of weeks. And I think in pre-season, obviously the big talk was that Mercedes obviously are powering four of the teams on the grid now. And they have all this data coming in. And the talk out of McLaren before the season started was, yeah, we have a great relationship and, you know, we're sharing all this data. And then as soon as we had issues in the first race, I think McLaren, I can't remember the issue McLaren had. They had something going on anyway. But yeah, they were basically finding out new information as they were on the track, and they kind of suggested that, you know, Mercedes were withholding information. So that there seems to be a little bit of stress in that, in particular, the McLaren and Mercedes, is it high performance power division they call it? There seems to be a little bit of stress in that relationship there, and in the Melbourne race and the China race afterwards, we've had these kind of little snipes from Stella and from Zach Brown as well about this, and again this double DNS again points to this kind of the interface between what Mercedes are giving them and what McLaren are building. So I think we have to kind of keep an eye on that, because that's bubbling under the surface, and there's a stress in that relationship, I think, there.
So basically, in English, Toto was just so upset that he hadn't won a championship in 5 or 6 years, and he's just like, now it's my turn, and I'm going to make sure I do it whatever way possible. I'm not going to tell you anything about this engine. I'm not giving you any secrets. Here you go. Do what you want. Yeah, no. Yeah, it is something to keep an eye on, because at the end of the day, like, I know, obviously, not every single car is going to be equal to each other. We're not going to have equal performance across the grid. there are going to be teams that are going to be faster than others and all that kind of stuff. But when you have this massive imbalance with just, I know, yes, we had the Red Bull dominance and we had the Mercedes dominance and all that kind of stuff. But when you have this level of imbalance, when you just have two teams, Mercedes and Ferrari, and then the rest of the grid are just going, that they think they're just driving a fucking cardboard box with paper wheels on them, you know, like they don't know what to do with these cars. It's just, it doesn't really make for fun racing to watch. Yes, it's great to see all these overtakes between Mercedes and Ferrari and everything. That's great and everything. But it's just, this can't go on for too long. There needs to be some sort of, they need to balance out these issues at in some way, shape or form. And it has to come to an end at some stage. But again, we could go on about this for ages. He wants to throw in one more point. Go ahead.
Just a quick thing on the fair thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's funny that Mercedes, they want to slow down the performance just to keep below the 4% before trigger. The other teams, they could start doing more research on that. So they want to drop the performance so they can just keep everyone just slow enough for them not to do anything about it. Just talking about being fair.
So from both of you, what I'm gathering here is that Mercedes are a bunch of cheaters. Is that what you're saying? or they're just being meanies. They're just doing them like, no, you can't play with our toys anymore.
No, it's just that they know the rules very, very well for 2026 and they know what they're doing.
They know them
They are
too
playing
well.
inside the lines, but they know very well where the lines are.
Yeah. Well, again, look, as I said, hopefully a lot of the issues that we've seen so far, hopefully they get ironed out as soon as possible, just going into the rest of the season. But chaps, we do need to talk about this race. That's what we're here for. But we're going to kick it off with the first team. We're going to start off with Ferrari. Ferrari, again, compared to the sprint race, it was the exact same scenario. They were off to the races again, basically. We had another fantastic start by Ferrari. We had Hamilton up to P1, going into turn 1 there. Kimi, he did very well to defend against Charles. He kept Charles away from that, taking that P2 slot away from him. Charles, he did end up sticking into P3 there for the majority of that first lap. We had Hamilton, Kimi, Charles, and then George, P1, P2, P3, and P4. That was a great battle to watch all the way down there. But then eventually, Stroll brought out the safety car on lap 10 because he was having issues. Obviously, look, we're not going to get into Aston Martin with this. We know that we've seen the videos, we've seen all the issues. We know that car is just an absolute death trap, but he was having vibrations coming through the car, and at one stage he was even saying that he was afraid he was going to get nerve damage. We've seen the clips of Fernando Alonso. He was the same situation. That was terrifying to watch, but you know, you don't want to see that with any driver. But anyway, he brought out the safety car in lap 10, and then eventually on the safety car restart, Hamilton was able to get ahead of Russell and pretty much into turn 6 because of Russell's lockup. So coming back into the sort of second to last or second section of whatever it was, just after that big long turn at turn 1 going down there, he locked up and then Hamilton was able to get by him. Then eventually we had Leclerc getting by Lindblad because on the safety car restart, I'm not sure Hamilton and Charles and stuff like that, they were a little bit further down in the grade at one stage. I think Colapinto was in like P2 or something like that, and then Lindblad was a little bit behind him, but Charles eventually got by Lindblad, and then both Ferraris were up to P2 and P3 by lap 16. Mercedes, I think Russell was coming across the radio pretty much complaining that they had no grip, and then of course we had that inevitable Charles and Hamilton battle that we seen in the sprint race as well, and at this stage I think everyone was on the edge of their seat and we were just going, oh guys, please don't hit. It was a great battle to watch, and even Charles came across the radio and said he was actually having a lot of fun with that battle, and that's great to see because we've seen these little sort of team rivalries, and of course we've seen what happened last year in Canada with Norris and Piastri, and we've seen what happened in the past with Hamilton and Rosberg, but yeah, that was a great battle to watch. Then also eventually, look, we know the power that Mercedes have behind them with that car. Russell got ahead of Charles to claim P2 there. I think it was on lap 30 in around that sort of time of the race. And then eventually Hamilton was able to come back and put it to Charles and get by him. So eventually it did end up Hamilton in P3, Charles in P4, and Ferrari pretty much picking up 27 points overall. From that weekend, or from that race, sorry, should I say. From the weekend overall, not 27 points from the race. Isidro, what did you make of Ferrari during that race? It was absolutely incredible to watch. I just, as a Ferrari fan, I've sat on the sidelines here and I've watched the pain and misery that Ferrari have been through, even during the ground effect era and prior to that. It was just great to see this kind of battling going on between the sprint and the main Grand Prix. But what did you make of them during the Grand Prix?
Yeah, I'm not a Ferrari fan, but I have to say Ferrari so far has been absolute cinema in both races. In the sprint race, it's fun to watch the Ferrari drivers battling each other without any sort of issues or anyone coming on the race saying, "Oh, you boys be careful now. Let's not destroy anything." Just let them race. They are big boys and know what they're doing. As long as they keep doing what they're doing, I think Ferrari is so far the best team. Mercedes might have the best car, but Ferrari provides a show in each race that they've been so far.
For the two races, Isidro, just for the two races so far.
2.5. So let's call the sprint a half race.
Yeah, 2.5 races. Those are very strong words, bold words to use. I think Damien has a counterpoint. Her statement here he wants to make on Ferrari. Go easy, Damien.
I would say as well, even that Ferrari livery is starting to grow on me. It's starting to look good.
No, totally disagree with the both of you there. That Ferrari livery can definitely go and do one. They need to do something. I can't wait for the special liveries. But again, when it comes to the special liveries that Ferrari have made in the last 2 years, they've been absolutely shockingly shite. I mean, we've all seen the Miami liveries that they've brought out. Looks like a tube of Colgate toothpaste, basically, when it's out on the track. And last year as well. Now, actually, the Monza livery that they had, that was pretty nice. But they cannot beat that livery that they had in 2023 in Las Vegas. That was, and in Isidro's words, absolute cinema. That was a beautiful livery. I keep on thinking about that, like just how it looked at nighttime going down. Oh, it was just incredible. But we're not here to talk about liveries. But again, this livery, I don't like it. Maybe it might grow on me if they just remove some of the white, but again, it's not the best. It's not the best. But yeah, no, it was definitely a great battle between Charles and Hamilton. And look, it was great to see Hamilton back on the podium again. I know he was on the podium last year for Ferrari in China. It was great to see him on that in the sprint race. But it was great to see him on the podium for the Grand Prix. And I have to say, look, I know Hamilton, he does get a little bit of bashing now and again. Maybe not a little bit. He does get a lot of bashing. But love him or hate him, I have to say it was great to see his enthusiasm and his sort of support. Like, again, look, we'll talk about Mercedes very shortly, but just how he was with Kimi Antonelli after the race, even in the cool down room, all of his words of encouragement and everything, like even like turning to Kimi when, Kimi was up on the screen, like, winning the race. He was like, whoa, man, your first Grand Prix victory. That's so cool. That's awesome. Like, it was great to see that level of support from Hamilton. And I love that about him. I really do. But yeah, hopefully we'll see Hamilton on more podiums in the future. Moving on to our next team, the boy from Bologna, because we were just talking about him. Damien, we need to talk about Mercedes. Mercedes, again, caught out by Ferrari on that race start. But as I said, Kimi, he actually did quite well to defend against Charles to hold on to that P2. But I think the story of this Grand Prix was Kimi Antonelli. Like, I know, obviously, Russell, he did have a little bit of difficulty during that Grand Prix. Obviously, yeah, he was in P4. Yes, he was complaining about grip and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't as smooth sailing as it was in Melbourne for George Russell. But for Kimi Antonelli, this was his day. From start to finish, he fought for that position. He got into P1. He controlled that race. And I think going into, more races down the line and stuff like that, I think this has just been a really, really good test for him and just a good a good amount of knowledge for him to know what to do in these scenarios and to control these races, because even at certain stages, like I know like near the end of the race when those hard tires were definitely screaming for grip at one stage, he locked up, he had a massive lockup going into the second to last corner there, and he even just went off the track and he had a pretty much a Code Brown moment, but he was still able to recover the car. He had a nice enough gap ahead of Russell by the end of that race, and obviously inevitably he did come in P1, but again, the power of that Mercedes, like even with George having all those issues with the car, and you know, yes, he was on a little bit of the back foot, he was just able to sail off ahead of Hamilton after that battle that they had. It was a good battle for all of that. It was only like a few laps they were going back and forward, but after he caught Hamilton out, he was just away to catch Kimi. He was about 7 or 8 seconds, 10 seconds at one stage down the road after that battle of Hamilton. Damien, Kimi Antonelli's first Grand Prix victory, absolutely incredible to see. It's great to get it under his belt. George, yes, finishing up in P2 there, claiming 43 points overall for that weekend. What did you make of Mercedes?
Yeah, like, was this his 26th race as a professional F1 driver, and it's his first victory, and he's 19 years of age. It's absolutely incredible, and you know, you really have to tip the hat to Toto and Mercedes for taking that gamble and you know, recognizing the talent and going with Kimi. Obviously last season was you know, his rookie year, and he performed very well, and he had a couple of mistakes here and there, but in general he was pretty solid last year, and you just kind of knew that, you know, this was coming. He was definitely going to get a race win, or race wins, I would say, this season, but to get it in the second race is incredible, and it's, you know, he's ahead of the curve and a megastar in the making, and he's a nice chap as well. You know, you can't but not love him. You know, he's very enthusiastic. He wants to race. He wants to race well. And I think the relationship he has with Lewis in particular is a good one. You know, I think that's quite obvious, that they seem to be pretty close. So a good mentor for him. And I think George works with him quite well as well. But he seems to get on well with Lewis. It was coming, and it came sooner than we actually thought. About the race itself, he just got the head down, and it was a really professional display from such a young driver. He's only 19. To do what he did is incredible. He did have that little issue near the end, though. I think with 2 laps to go, he had a little bit of a lockup. I think the tires were screaming, as you would say. That course in particular is pretty tough on the tire deg. And I was like, oh no, don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. Don't do it. But yeah, I think Bono just gave him a little kind of pep talk in the ears, like, you know, take it easy, get it home, chill out, you've got this. And, you know, I think as well that mature race engineer that he has, you know, obviously he's won multiple championships with Lewis. He knows how to bring home a car. So I think he's got good advice. He's got good engineers, and he's well on the way to being a world champion, either this year possibly or next year. But yeah, great race for Mercedes overall. I think there was that period where they were kind of duking it out with Ferrari, and the Ferrari cars as well, having some great racing between the two of them. So yeah, it was really enjoyable to watch those two teams who really seem to have got a grip of this set of regulations, and it's producing some great racing between these two old rivals. But yeah, I was glad as well to see George not win this one. He kind of needed taking down a peg or two, I think. He's, I think after the Melbourne race, he was, his head was getting a little bit too big for his shoulders, and George Russell, world champion, he probably will be, but I think it was nice for Kimi just to remind him that he has, he's nipping at his heels, and if George screws up at any time, Kimi's there he's right breathing down his shoulder, to overtake him. So there's a good dynamic going on there. They've two first drivers. They're kind of similar to the McLaren dynamic there, but it seems to work a little bit better at Mercedes, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting as we go on throughout the season just to see how this plays out, especially between Kimi and Russell. And, you know, if it does get to that stage where they're so evenly matched on points, who does Mercedes pick in terms of, you know, their number one driver? And are there going to be those heated moments between the two of them and issues? And then obviously that's an opportunity for Ferrari to come and capitalize on them. It's definitely going to be an interesting season, but hats off to Kimi Antonelli. It was absolutely incredible to see that first race win. Isidro has a follow-up point.
What a question. So if we reach that stage where Toto needs to pick Russell or Kimi, which one do you think?
I'm going with Kimi anyway, because I'm not a Russell fan.
Have to think like Toto. That was the question, right? What would Toto do?
What would Toto do? Well, look, okay, let me rewind there. Well, you see, it really depends on how the next, until we get to at least Belgium, I think it really, really depends on how the points go. If it gets to a stage where Russell, he's a good 40, 50 points ahead of Kimi, then yeah, I'd say more than likely Russell, but it just really depends on who capitalizes on the other driver. You know, like it just, you know, as Damien was saying there, if they make certain mistakes, Kimi's going to be there to pick up on that, and that's where we could have this really, really close battle again between the two drivers. So it's really, really hard to tell, but I think I'm just making that opinion of me going with Kimi just based off of which driver I like better. But we could talk about this for ages. We know how much we talked about McLaren last season.
What about you, Damien?
I think he picks George. You know, George is the senior member of the team. But if it's a case that, and I think in that case, it's if he's ahead and he's leading. If it's a case that Kimi is leading, then, you know, I think he goes with Kimi. I think they have they're both first drivers, you know, you put it that way. Whoever's ahead gets the call, but if it came down to it and they're equal, I think he'd probably go with George just on the seniority side of things. I think Kimi they're both quite young drivers still. George is very young in the greater scheme of things as well, but I think he goes with seniority, because if he doesn't, then, you know, George is gone. I think that's pretty clear. Somebody would take George, no problem. He's a good driver. He's got a lot of questions on his mind and a lot of decisions, but I think he goes for seniority if it's equal, and then he goes with the person who's in front if that's the case, you know. Yeah,
George just needs to take a little bit of Toto advice, and he just needs to focus, George, focus. We all remember the quote. But anyway, again, as I said, we could talk about this for ages. We do need to talk about this next team, Isidro, Red Bull, or should I call them Raging Bulls, because oh my god, they came out of that weekend absolutely raging. Again, for Verstappen, it was just a literal carbon copy of the sprint start, getting bogged down again and just dropping back, and a sea of cars just flying by him. I'm sure that is just absolutely disheartening to see that happening for any driver, regardless of if you've won 4 championships or if you've won none at all. Regardless of, it is disheartening to see a bunch of cars just flying by you on a race start. But he did manage to climb up back through the pack. Like, he was doing well to regain those positions, you know, like he was fighting against, you know, the likes of the Haas's, the Audis and all that kind of stuff, and the Racing Bulls at one stage, and, you know, he was even trying to put it to Gasly in the Alpine. But unfortunately, the end came at lap 46 for Verstappen when he had to retire the car. There was an electrical issue. Again, computers, machines ruining the sport. Came on lap 46 when he had to retire the car. Just couldn't go up the gears or even down the gears. That was it. It was game over for Verstappen. But Hadjar, again, he just definitely does not have the best start in China. He not only in the sprint race was he spinning around the place or getting hit by Antonelli, he was spinning on the back straight. Oh my god, that was definitely a dicey moment, especially for Ollie Behrman, who had to witness that in front of him, just seeing Hadjar spinning across the front and him having to dodge out of the way. But even on lap 1, that was just that was definitely a kick in the stones for Hadjar for sure. But again, it does go to show, and this is the one thing that I have noticed, especially over these 2 weekends, Verstappen and Hadjar, I think is a really, really good dynamic. And I think, I don't want to say the curse of the second Red Bull seat is gone, but I have to say Hajar is still managing to try and get as many points as possible for Red Bull, even with Verstappen, if he has to go on the sidelines with a retirement or a crash or whatever, or if Verstappen's having issues. So it's good to finally see a teammate that can actually pick up some points along with Verstappen. Like, I know Perez was able to do the same thing, but of course we all know what happened there eventually. But again, look, he did manage to come back to the pack and claim P8 by the end of the race. But overall, for the entire race weekend, Isidro, 4 points for Oracle Red Bull Racing. I think this is definitely a weekend to forget for Red Bull. Am I right, Isidro?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think the previous weekend was also very bad for them. It's definitely not a good start for Red Bull.
Yeah.
After all the happiness that they had in the past few years with Verstappen doing everything he could out of a shitbox like it was last year car, but he cannot make miracles with this year's car, at least not so far. But yeah, it's Red Bull really need to take a look at Racing Bulls and learn with them, because the way things are going, I think the promotion is going to Racing Bulls and not going from Racing Bulls to Red Bull, because both teams have 12 points and Red Bull was supposed to be the big dog, was supposed to be there with Ferrari fighting Mercedes and not fighting the other midfield teams.
No, 100%. And it is disappointing to see, because I know at the same time too, there's a lot of people out there, and I've seen in the comments that are saying like, oh, well, look, Verstappen, he dominated for so many years. And but regardless of this, regardless of a driver, if you like him or dislike him, at the end of the day, being in this situation in a car like that, it's very disheartening for a driver. And again, at the end of the day, yes, they're all there to try and win, and they're all there to try and be world champions and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, we've seen it happen with Alpine. We've seen it happen with Williams. They struggled massively over the last 4 to 5 years and have struggled for a very, very long time. But to have a driver like Verstappen, you know, getting that sort of mental punishment each weekend, there's only so much that you can take as a driver. Like Red Bull, they definitely need to get a grip on this, especially during this 5-week break that's coming up. I don't know, maybe if they'll be able to turn things around for Japan, but hopefully by the time we get to Miami, hopefully it's a different story. But, you know, I think just overall, it's good, even though that they have those caliber of drivers there that can still manage to secure some points, even with the feckin' shit tools that they have at their disposal, you know. It's good that Hajar and Verstappen, that they are trying to work together. But we do need to move on for Red Bull, because again, we could talk about that for ages. We're going to talk about two teams in particular. We're going to talk about Haas and Alpine. But before we go any further, lads, I'm just going to bring this up. But like, if you're watching this over on YouTube, I'll bring this up on YouTube now on screen for everybody. But on Spotify, you won't be able to see this, but you'll be able to mentally picture this. I just want you to quickly tell me the difference between this picture and this picture right here. Can you see what I'm bringing up here, guys? Can you see this? Can anyone spot the difference between these two pictures?
Yeah, I got it.
As soon as I seen Flavio Briatore hugging Franco Colapinto, these images here, just straight away, what popped into my mind was Lord Voldemort hugging Draco Malfoy at the end of those Harry Potter movies. I mean, it is just absolutely uncanny. But here, it was good to see Alpine finally coming out of the works there and actually, you know, putting in some performance this weekend. I mean, you know, seeing Gasly starting in P7 now, obviously he was able to get up to P5, obviously with the McLaren, you know, them being absent from the grid. But it was good to even see that even on the safety car restart, seeing Franco Colapinto, and look, this guy, I don't really have a lot of good sort of comments for this guy. You guys know my opinions on Colapinto from last season and even the season before. It was good to see that he was able to fight, you know, both Gasly and Colapinto with the car that they have this season. You know, like they were putting it to the Racing Bulls at one stage. Obviously, they were trying to defend against the Ferraris, but that didn't last very long. But that battle with Haas, that was brilliant. Now, I know there was a little bit of an incident between Ocon and Colapinto. Ocon fully came across the radio and said, yeah, that was his fault. And yes, he did receive that time penalty. Ocon bringing back that meme again. 5-second penalty for Ocon. Definitely bringing that back in a big way this season. But even that battle with Gasly going after Behrman, that was fantastic to watch. But eventually, at the end of that race, we had Gasly in P8 and Colapinto in P10, picking up double points for Alpine this weekend. The last time they were able to do something like that was in Brazil in 2024, I think it was. It was back in 2024. Obviously with Gasly and Ocon who were at the wheel. And then we had Behrman and Ocon, Behrman finishing in P5 and Ocon finishing in P14, picking up 10 points for Haas, 11 points overall, with Behrman obviously finishing in P8 during the sprint race. That was a great battle to watch, chaps. It really, really was. Damien, I'll get your thoughts real quick, both on Alpine and Haas.
Yeah, Alpine is alive and kicking. You know, there's life in the old dog yet, it seems. And yeah, Pierre Gasly is he's a good driver. You know, for a couple of years he's been in a really, really bad car, and you could see the frustration. There was little flashes here and there, and that Mercedes power unit in the back of that Alpine seems to have given them somewhat of a chance of not being, you know, dead last again. So. It was a great race from Gasly. And in terms of Haas, you know, 17 points I think Haas are on now in P4, all scored by Ollie Behrman. Like he's going fantastic. I think he's already got about half the points that he got in the whole entire season last year. So yeah, Haas have really just come on leaps and bounds since last season. You could see the improvement last year, but yeah, and Ollie Behrman is just sitting in the wings waiting, I think, for, you know, that Ferrari seat to come up in the next couple of seasons. You can see him getting straight back into the Ferrari stable. But it was a great race between those two. There was lots of action. Yeah, poor old Ocon again was tipping into the back of Colapinto. I don't think Colapinto could see him. He was just coming out of the pit lane, and he was just darting for the racing line. And yeah, Ocon was like, "Yeah, there's a little gap. I'll go for it." And he just knew when he went for it that he shouldn't have. Yeah, and as you said, he kind of held up the hands and my fault. But poor old Colapinto got a bit of a shock, I think, from that one. To get two Alpine in the top 10 scoring points is an incredible feat compared to where they were last season and over the past number of seasons. That's an incredible turnaround. And I suppose in the drivers or the team constructors championship now, you've got the two Red Bull organizations in a Alpine Haas sandwich. So that midfield battle is going to be very interesting this year. And yeah, P4 is up for grabs. There's nobody that's kind of nailed on there, and Haas have every chance to take that if they continue.
Yeah, definitely. And Isidro, what did you make of that Haas and Alpine battle? It was very exciting, I think. It was tense at a few different stages.
Yeah, not absolute cinema like Ferrari fight between themselves, but it was good to see that Alpine is back from the ashes, and it proved that it can still fight among the other midfielder teams. And it was nice to see Colapinto, as I said in the very beginning of this season, that Colapinto would be doing some points for Alpine, and he just second race he's already doing points. So it's nice to see that the problem. They have very good drivers, Alpine, Colapinto and Gasly. I think they do a very good pair. Ocon, he's still a bit. He still doesn't like Alpine. Doesn't care who is in the seat. He just needs to crash into the Alpine, either it's Gasly or Colapinto. Ocon just doesn't forget Alpine. That's what I see.
He's still hung up.
yeah, it is. He doesn't let go. But I'm not as surprised to see as Ferrari doing well, because they are already doing well last year. I'm more surprised to see that Alpine was able to pick up the new regulations and do something good with a new engine from Mercedes. And have both drivers doing well so far, adjusting very, very well to the car and doing points. 2 races in.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that Flavio Briatore hug during qualifying definitely helped Colapinto out in a big way. Maybe that's what he needs each weekend and going into Japan, just that little Briatore hug. He's cracked the code.
and still on the Haas, I think Behrman is doing very, very well this year, more than Ocon. And it's only been, and Behrman was a rookie this year, and the second season he's proving to be much, much mature, and I'm pretty sure we'll see Behrman in the podium.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely foresee a Behrman podium at some stage this season. Now, more than likely in the predictions game, I'm not going to put that in there, but it'll probably happen and he'll shock all of us. But anyway, folks, look, that was the Chinese Grand Prix. There was obviously a lot more action as well between different teams. There was obviously things from Cadillac and Aston Martin and, you know, the Audi and stuff like that we could get into. But it was definitely an exciting one, but we do need to wrap this up. But we will wrap it up with the top 10. The top 10 results from the Chinese Grand Prix. We had Antonelli claiming his first ever victory there in P1. Russell coming in there in P2. Hamilton in P3. Leclerc in P4. Behrman coming in there in P5. Gasly in P6. Lawson in P7. Hadjar in P8. Sainz there, Williams, definitely good to see a little bit of sign from Williams there. Claiming 2 points in P9. And then Franco Colapinto making up the last of the top 10 in P10 there, claiming that final point for the weekend. Moving on to, actually, before we do move on, we do need to talk about those DNFs. There were 7 DNFs in total. We had DNFs and DNSs, but in total we had Alonso, Stroll, Piastri, Norris, Bortoleto, Albon and Verstappen all out of the race. 7 cars did not get to the finish line, which was definitely disappointing. But moving on to our next segment, we've completely forgot to include this in our first episode there in Australia. If you're just joining us for the first time here on the Late Night Race Review, last season and obviously for the since the show began, we've been doing this segment. We call it our driver of the day, our dick of the day, and our loser of the day. It's very self-explanatory, but Damien, can you give me your driver of the day, your dick of the day, and your loser of the day, please?
Driver, yeah, it has to be Antonelli. Yeah, first Grand Prix win for such a young lad, fantastic talent. If he hadn't won that, you'd have to give it to Behrman. He was fantastic this weekend for Haas. So two very promising drivers there, but yeah, Kimi gets it. Dick of the day for me was Ocon, for that Colapinto clash. Even though he put up his hands and said, sorry about that one, he still did it. So yeah, Dick of the day is Ocon for me. And loser of the day, McLaren, first double DNS since Indianapolis 2005. So that's a massive loser of the day for them. I think you can also talk about Aston Martin, but they're just in a different stratosphere of loserness at the moment.
Damien pulling out the F1 facts here.
I like the Indy race. That was a good one. Yeah, bring it back.
That was brilliant. Indianapolis is a great track. It really, really is. Isidro, who is your driver of the day, your dick of the day, and loser of the day?
Pretty much what Damien said. A driver of the day would be Kimi Antonelli, the second youngest driver to win a F1 Grand Prix. Very well done by Kimi. Dick would be Ocon. He can't let go Alpine. He just he sees pink and he just goes into it, and that's it.
Oh, Isidro, that's what she said.
There's your short clip. There's your short clip for YouTube.
There we go. That's going to be 100% made into a short.
And loser of the day would be McLaren, of course. It was a bit disappointing, I'm pretty sure, for Piastri and Norris. Drive the sprint and then get the main race and just nope, not going anywhere.
That's it. Womp womp. You lose. Car does not start. Car does not go. I'm sure Max Verstappen was hearing those Ford alarm bell sounds that usually go off in a Ford car. Doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo. But yeah, look, my drive of the day, I'm with you guys in this one. Kimi Antonelli, you have to give it to him. First ever Grand Prix victory. You have to give it to, a driver when they get their first Grand Prix victory. But hats off to Antonelli. It was great to see him get that there. My dick of the day, I'm giving it to these 2026 regulations. They are the dick of the day. They're causing a lot of problems for drivers and cars and teams. I hope they actually get a handle on these, and I hope there's a little bit of a change going forward into the rest of the season. So 2026 regs, you get my dick of the day. And then loser of the day, I'm giving it to Red Bull. They had an awful weekend, an absolutely awful weekend between the sprint race and then also the main Grand Prix. Even though, yes, they did pick up 4 points with Hadjar, but still, that was an awful weekend for Red Bull. So yeah, they're going to get my loser of the day. Moving on to our next segment, folks. Oh, well, kind of our final segment. Well, there's 2 segments in this one. Our predictions game, and then we will wrap this up with our fantasy game. But moving on into our predictions game, obviously, the guys, we got your predictions there from last week, but we will go through these because, again, at the moment, Dave is currently still in the lead. Just let that sink in there, Damien. But going into China, we had Dave at his predictions. He had Hamilton in P1, Russell in P2, and Verstappen in P3. I think the days of putting Verstappen in on the podium are gone for a while anyway. Yep. So unfortunately, 0 points from those there. Dave, he then also had Gasly outside the top 10, which was 0 points. And then he also had Lawson inside the top 10, which was 1 point. So overall, Dave got 1 point from this weekend.
He had Russell P2.
Did he? Oh, he did have Russell P2. Dave, I am so sorry. Sorry. Apologies, Dave. I'm sorry. We're sorry. We're so sorry. I take that back. Russell, he was P2. So, Dave, you got 2 points. Apologies. Isidro, what were your predictions?
I had Russell P1, Antonelli P2, and Hamilton P3.
Oh, picking up 1 point as well there. For crucial point.
Yeah, all counts. And then I had Lindblad, DNF, and I had Sainz inside top 10.
Oh, do you know what, Isidro? You were on the money with the DNF, but it was a sprint race. Yeah. Yeah. You're probably looking at that going, God damn it.
Wrong race.
Yeah. And that was 2 points for yourself. My predictions, I had Russell in P1, Hamilton in P2, and Antonelli in P3. I had the right podium, but in the wrong order. And then I had Gasly outside the top 10, which was completely wrong. And then I had Ocon inside the top 10, which was also completely wrong. So that was an entire massive cake of nothing for me this weekend. Damien, what was your predictions?
I had Russell P1, Antonelli P2, and Leclerc P3. So yeah, right teams, wrong order. I had Gasly outside the top 10, which was a 0, and then Lawson inside the top 10, which was 1.
Oh, just 1 point, Damien. And does that mean now that Dave is actually still ahead of you by 2 points? Oh, my dear Lord. Now, I know that I'm last, but I will make a comeback.
That's not like P4, hey?
Yeah, and we'll just talk about that when we get into the fantasy league. So just, keep those words to yourself, Damien. But anyway, look, we do need to make our predictions for Japan. More than likely, we will get Dave's predictions during the week. But Isidro, what are your predictions for the Japanese Grand Prix?
So for Japan, I have Russell P1, Kimi P2, and Leclerc P3.
Ooh, interesting. Very interesting. And who's going to be your flop and surprise?
So I'll see Colapinto outside the top 10, and Lindblad is back into the top 10.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. My predictions, I've got Russell in P1, Antonelli in P2, and I'm going with Hamilton in P3. Then I also have Colapinto outside the top 10 and Lindblad inside the top 10. I think that's pretty much what we're all going with here. And Damien, you have literally just copied my exact same predictions, so I don't even need to ask you. You're just terrified that I'm just going to get past you.
No, it's literally the only option for this next race. There's so many DNFs and DNFs. You didn't pick them.
Well, to be fair, Isidro has Leclerc as his top 3.
Yeah, like that's a Ferrari, and pick Leclerc or Hamilton. It's all the same at the end of the day. But when it came to the others, there was like literally no options.
Yeah.
It's not Bottas or Perez aren't going to get inside the top 10. So
you don't know, Damien. Cadillac could come alive in Japan.
Yeah. What are the points looking like?
Oh, what are the points looking like? Okay, well, look, moving into our newest
P4.
segment. Moving into our new segment this season, which is our Fantasy League. Again, thank you so much to everyone who has joined the Fantasy League. We're now up to 14 teams in total who have joined the Fantasy League. And of course, look, if you are watching this over on YouTube, I will leave obviously the league code and the link to all of that in the description below. And you'll also see it here on screen. And then obviously in Spotify, you can pick up the link in there as well. But everyone is more than welcome to join and make your teams and all that kind of stuff and join us for this season. But anyway, before we talk about the top 3 or the top 4 or whatever, I just want to point it out there just real quick. I know you mentioned last weekend, Damien, that Dave was, last, before everybody else. Did you take a look there and see who's in P13?
Well, I'm not P last, that's for sure.
Well, you're not P last, but I think Dave, he put out a big statement this weekend. He moved up there to P11 there, just ahead of yourself. But and I just want to point out that I'm still in P8. Yeah, still in P8, so there you go, picking up some nice points. And Isidro, P5. That's interesting. That's very interesting, getting some nice points there from your Ferrari and Mercedes. Absolute Goliath of points that you got from those two constructors. But our top 3 at the moment, we have Whip Verstappen in P1 on 768 points. And then we also have Saptarshi F3 in P2 on 766. And then there's also Tire Shredder number 1 in P3 on 724 points. Definitely an interesting weekend. People definitely got some good predictions in there for the Fantasy League for China. And of course, look, we have Japan next week, which is going to be an interesting one. Damien, you've got a thing to point out here?
Yeah, I think we have to get our chip game going because, all in the top 4 used this limitless chip, and they had like George Russell, Kimi Antonelli, Leclerc, Verstappen, Hamilton, and they had Ferrari and Mercedes as their 2 teams. So,
God.
yeah.
Damn it, I was hoping you would completely miss that because I was looking at the Fantasy League after China, after the race had finished, and I was like, how do these guys have like 700 points and we're all down here in 500? And then I looked at it and was like, limitless? I was like, what's limitless? And I started Googling it going, all right. And I thought it was like a subscription thing that you have to buy into. And then I looked into it further and I was like, oh, it's a chip you can activate. And I was like, I'm not going to tell Damien anything about this.
Well, I read the rules before you did, so I knew about it, but it's like, right, I have to use.
Oh, did you? Did you read the rules, Mr. P13?
No matter what speed I am, it's if you read the rules or not.
Well, clearly I read the rules better than you did because I'm in P8 and you're in P13.
After 2 races, come back to me when it's at the end of the season. Yeah, that's when it matters.
Well, look, Damien, we're now 2 races down this season already, so that's 2 extra races that you could have gotten some good points in. So it all matters.
Races.
Yeah, exactly. It all matters. It all matters, Damien.
You're like Ferrari, off the line good, but just can't finish it out,
Oh, we'll see who's talking after Japan. We'll see who's talking after Japan, my friend. We'll see that, and you'll be sitting there for 5 weeks just looking at me ahead of you. Now, if you are ahead of me after Japan, I will absolutely eat my words. But no, you will be sitting there. Believe me.
You have to be careful about these chips as well, because some of them are just a one-time use, so you kind of have to save them for a good part of the season or a good opportunity. So yeah.
Well, I'm using it for Japan because quite literally I'm going to get a ton of points from Ferrari and Mercedes, and that's going to help me out in a massive way because we'll come back to Miami and all the teams will have everything under control and I'll just be back to normal and I'll be like, oh, thank God I used that for Japan. Or am I just baiting you into using that now, David? But anyway, regardless of what we have to say, Damien, Isidro is sitting there in P5 at the moment, so he's absolutely crushing it over all of us right now. So
oh yeah.
That's it. Zedra definitely coming in right there with the old fantasy predictions. But yeah, guys, thank you so much to everyone who has joined the Fantasy League so far. It has been good fun over these couple of weekends. Obviously seeing what everyone's doing and learning a little bit more about it, and you know what to do and what not to do. It's definitely been some good fun. So again, look, if you want to join us, the league code is available on screen as well, and it'll be in the description of wherever you're listening to this or watching this and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, look, folks, that was China. It was good fun. It was interesting. It was good to get a sprint race and also a main Grand Prix. Yeah, it was definitely a very, very fun weekend. I'm looking forward now to not having to get up as early. Like, I know obviously, yeah, we've got Japan next weekend. That's going to be a little bit early, but then, going
the weekend
into
after, you mean?
Yeah, the weekend after, sorry,
Japan
when we go
is only Easter. So
well, yeah, sorry. When we go in Japan, once we get that out of the way, it'll be somewhat back to normal sort of times. Like, I know we've got Miami and whatever, but it won't be that bad. But yeah, look, again, thank you so much for joining me, chaps. I know obviously you're very busy yourselves anyway with your day, but thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat about the Chinese Grand Prix and the sprint race as well. It was good to catch up with you.
Yeah, thanks. This was fun.
Awesome. Well, look, folks, until next weekend, thank you again so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did enjoy and you've been enjoying the season so far, regardless of where you're listening to this, if you're on Spotify or YouTube or whatever platform that you're listening to the podcast on, definitely make sure to give the episode a like. And if you can, definitely make sure to support us by clicking that subscribe or follow button. It would greatly help us out in a massive way. And we'd love to hear from you as well. Tell us your thoughts this weekend on the Chinese Grand Prix. Our opinions. What did you think? Do you think we were right? Do you think we got it wrong? What is your take? We want to know. Definitely let us know below in the comments. But until next weekend, enjoy the rest of your week, folks. If you're celebrating St. Patrick's Day tomorrow, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody in Ireland and across the world, and to anyone who celebrates St. Patrick's Day. But until next time, folks, we will see you for the Japanese Grand Prix. Adios.